Hi, Victoria. Sorry it took me so long to get to this, but with the back and forth last night, then I just got busy with other things. I'm looking at your presentation file, which largely is in English now, which is great. Makes makes it a lot easier. A couple of things on your title slide. Um, as we discussed, the 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 color choice here. I mean, this picture is really pretty. I like it, but you can read the title okay, but some of the other information is lost. So you might think about how we could get this information to stand out a little bit more. Like for instance, your Twitter username is completely lost there. Can't really see much around the capstone banner. I mean, it's not a huge issue. It's just that people won't be able to see that. I'm assuming people will largely be able to read this information about your host organization and stuff like that. But you do have to be aware that sometimes when we project this on other screens, the resolution is a little bit lower, and that could be somewhat of a problem. I'm not sure if we talked about the idea of doing some sort of transparency screen to make this, to sort of change the contrast a bit so that the text would stand out. I wasn't sure. Maybe you said you didn't like that. I can't recall now. Anyway, just something to think about. Um, I see that you changed from widescreen format to the standard format, which I think is probably a good choice, um, given given how things project. All right. I think the way that you've laid things out now is looking really really good. The one thing that I might suggest to you is perhaps trying to um, standardize the size of your titles. So this is your context. Good. This next one is still your context, but the size of the text is a little bit different. And so what you might think about doing is making it left justified, and then make sure that the title is in the same location on both slides, so that where context is the same, and then the this bit is different because the difference between these two slides, it just makes it a little bit harder to see. And I think it's because PowerPoint is resizing it from one slide to the next. A trick is to say, for instance, what you can sort of defeat PowerPoint if you were to copy this text box from this slide, paste it into the other slide, and then just change this portion. Then it would appear the same size and in the same location. It's just a little PowerPoint trick, but it's not a huge issue. I do like that you have these coming in, having your text come in separately. So outdoor education being a good thing, and then some potential issues as it relates to gender. If anything, you might think about including an additional space between these bullet points, just so they're spread out just a little bit more. Questions look good. A little bit of the wording here that you should think about. How is the field of outdoor education providing inclusive spaces that set, not sets, set girls up to succeed? Otherwise, looks great. I think that you've done a good job on this slide simplifying it. It's a good picture of you too, and I think there's really not much here that I think, yeah, I don't really think there's anything really to deal with. Okay, and now we get into your results, and I'm really excited about the way you have this laid out now. I think it's I think it's a great approach, and kind of what I was hoping that you would do. So this is fantastic. One thing I want to point out is that you still have this weird stuff going on in the figure itself, so be mindful of that. And I've got this I don't know what all these strange characters here in the title of the figure. So you want to make sure that you change that so that it appears correctly. Just like I said, for the context, your titles here vary from slide to slide, even though you're in the results. I also think that there's an opportunity here to simplify this. I mean, I understand why you have the question as your result here. I think that you could probably change it to results : outdoor education and inclusive spaces, or something like that, just to simplify it. And it would essentially be the same on both of these the result slides that focus on that issue. So you'd shorten here, copy it, paste it on the next slide. Because one of the things that happens, not only does it, it's long, but it also sort of changes location, if you notice, between one slide and the next. The other thing I would say about the slide, I think it's good stuff, but I think that there's maybe just a little bit too much information on here. I don't know that you necessarily need to have 72% of girls participated, 61% of boys. I mean, I think that if you want to share that with people, that's great. You can share that information because I think it's essentially reflected in the figure. One other point I would make is you say 72 and 61, and I see 72 here for girls, but with boys, it actually looks like it's actually lower, like maybe 56, 57. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know that the bullet point is here, and make sure that whatever you say is consistent with what the figure is showing. I'm assuming that this is the same information. I can't really tell because of the title slide being a little bit different. The other thing I point out is that in the version that I'm looking at, your axis lines are really, really faint. In fact, the vertical one barely showing up, and so you might want to think about making those a little thicker, a little darker when you go in to change that title. But I do like the content. And then I think this is also really great. Simplify that. This is good information. Increase the thickness of the axis labels, but really good stuff. If I had one potential gripe, it would be that this one is just a little bit long. This bullet point is a little bit long, but really not terribly troubling. I think like I said, you have really good information there. Okay, so now we're continuing with the results. I feel like again, you could probably change this from the question to a much shorter statement, and that would be consistent across the next couple of slides. But I think that you are just based on what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing some interesting. I think this is good. I think for me, it was just a matter of kind of showing the data you collected and what it supported, and now you're moving on to what can be done to increase gender equity. Good. This is good. You mentioned increased gender teacher training on gender. Good. Instructor responsibility. Good. Give girls leadership roles. I mean, I'm not sure where you will talk about the fact that because you also say give access to female role models. I think that this, if you haven't already talked about it, it's a good place to mention, as you pointed out, that many of the instructors, the leaders, you among them at camp were female, and that is a positive, showing positive role models. So that's a good positive thing. I think this is overall really good. There are quite a few bullet points, and I'm not quite sure why this very first one isn't a bullet point and the other ones are. Maybe because these could be maybe you're thinking of these as sub points of this first point in terms of increased teacher training about these things. That's fine. I mean, if that's the case, you might just be able to remove that. That just gets rid of some of the clutter, and then you just talk about increasing training about those topics. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have the text on every single slide all the time. If you can just tell your audience about it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that you really, I know that your broader significance is just a single point down here, which is fine. Usually we try to put the broader significance on a separate slide, just to emphasize it, because broader significance is an important piece. So hopefully you will be spending a little bit of time talking about that. But if you need to, or if you want to, having an extra slide specifically to talk about broader significance is not a bad idea, since it is an important part. Thinking about the extensions of this work, both your study and the research that you did, is an important thing to have. So it's okay if you want to do it this way, just as long as you make sure that you don't short shrift this piece of your presentation. Okay, and your acknowledgement slides look fine as well, look good. That's it. All right, well, hey, like I said, I think it looks really good. My comments are fairly minimal, really, and I just want to make sure that a couple of those little things that I know would probably drive you crazy get dealt with. And particularly the language thing on that one figure, you'll want to make sure you deal with that too. Okay, if you have any other questions, please let me know. But like I said, it looks great, and I'm excited for your presentation.